Peace, peace, good people, and welcome to Honoring Our Ancestral Practices, a space where I share the ways in which I'm honoring my ancestral practices through traveling, food, and art, and also sharing tips on how you as a Black creative can travel the world learning new skills and build authentic relationships with locals, all while not breaking the bank. So let's get into it. So for this episode, I want to start with the first trip I took abroad to study, right? So as I explained in my first episode about me, where I spoke about how as a child, my mom would send me and one of my older brothers to Haiti every summer. This is not that. So those trips I considered more going to see family, catching up with them, learning more about my culture, etc., right? So this trip that I'm going to talk to you all about, this is the first trip that began the way I travel now, right? So this is a trip where the main focus of it was for me to study and leave having learned something, right? So I wasn't just going to meet a friend. I wasn't just going to hang out and relax like on vacation. Like I was specifically going there to learn something. So this first trip led me to Mali, West Africa. Mali, let me tell y'all, has such a deep place in my heart because of the way I was welcomed, because of my experience there. I mean, all around, y'all, I was ready to move there after like 2 months. I legit called home to my mom and was like, "Ma, I am home. Like I have found my people, like I found my family." And I'm pretty sure she was on the other end like, this woman has lost her mind. Like, what is she talking about? So in 2011, I traveled to Mali, West Africa to study traditional wood sculpture. So let me take you back to the year prior. So in early 2010, I was wrapping up my studies at community college. I was majoring in fine arts. So at the time I was in a printmaking class and we had an assignment to create, I think it was like a monoprint or something like that, right? So while I'm in this area gathering supplies for the print that I'm about to do, I happen to look up on the wall and there's a poster that says, "Study Arts and Culture in Mali, West Africa." So I'm looking at the poster and immediately, like after reading the headline of it, right, the first two thoughts that came into my mind was, one, I'm an artist, and two, I've always wanted to go to Africa, right? Because up to that point, I had only been traveling to Haiti, right? So as a kid, and then I got older, like that was the only international stamp that was in my passport, right? So with those two thoughts, I set in my mind in that moment that I was going to Mali. So I take the flyer off the wall, fold it up, put it in my backpack, continue on with the day as normal, finishing my print project, what have you, right? So I believe it was either that same day, like right after I got out of class, or it had to be the next day, because I think maybe I took it home to like really read the flyer and see like what this was about, right? And also up until this point, I had never done any type of study trip with a school. So this flyer was advertising a study abroad program with a college. It wasn't the college I was in at the time. It was a different out-of-state college. But after reading this flyer over, I was like even more determined, okay? And at the time, I think I had to be like 19 or 20. And so I take that flyer to the study abroad office at the school. I'm led into the office of Miss Thera Woodard. So Miss Thera Woodard was the director of the study abroad office at my community college. And she was also a Black woman, y'all. So I walked in and I was like, all right, okay. So I explained to her that I have this flyer that I saw on the wall, and this is a program that I want to attend, right? Like I'm an artist and I want to go to Africa, right? And she sat me down and was like, tell me a little bit about yourself. Like, what are you majoring in? Why are you interested in this program? I had to have repeated like every other minute, I'm an artist and I want to go to Africa. Let me tell you this other thing, right? So my African American humanities professor, Miss Karen Khan, she remarried, so she's not a Khan anymore. I had reached out to her before I went to the study abroad office, and I was like, I saw this flyer on the wall. This is a program that I'm really interested in. And she was like, oh yeah, you need to go to the study abroad office, right? So now fast forward, I'm back in front of Miss Thera Woodard. And after talking to her and explaining to her like why I wanted to go on this trip and a little bit more about me, she was like, we're getting you to Africa. Let me tell you. Let me tell you something. Okay, when a black woman believes in you and like put some faith behind you, is bound to happen. Okay, so I already was like, I'm going on this trip. To have Miss Woodard be like, yeah, we getting you to Africa, right? And Miss Khan was already on board. She was like, yeah, you going to Africa, right? So now it's like two of them behind me, like pushing me, motivating me to go on this trip. It was set in stone, right? So after we all linked arms and was like, we're getting Alex to Mali, West Africa, now came the time to fund the trip, right? And I had no clue like where to start. So Miss Woodard was like my resource for all of it. And also Miss Khan, because Miss Khan had also done, she had traveled also. So now I'm like talking to two black women outside of my mom who have traveled like internationally and seen so many parts of the world that I had not yet seen yet. So that was also influential for me, of like the people who were around me and who had support in me to go on this trip, right? Miss Woodard then started me on the track of looking for scholarship, looking for grants and things like that, right? Looking for scholarships within the community college, looking for grants nationally, locally, all types of things, right? Like everything was open. It was like, oh, ask like friends and family, right? Do a friends and family round, right? To fund your trip. But she was definitely like, ask your friends and family. Like that's step number one. Number two is ask people in your community. So if you're involved in organizations, a local church, etc., like ask people for donations. Like really tell them what you want to do and why you want to go study on this trip, and just be open with people and allow them to donate if they have capacity. If they don't, ask them to share with other people who may have resources and would want to donate, right? Then we started researching like statewide grants. So like Florida grants, anything that would help with like funding travel. And I think my community college also had a grant. It was like pretty small, but it was like a couple $100s that could be put towards the study abroad trip. And let me say, so this trip ended up being, I want to say it was like 15 grand. It had to be like 12 or 15 grand, right? Like crazy. This was in like 2010, but it was very expensive. And Miss Woodard was also, she was adamant about me like not taking out a loan to cover this. So she was like, we don't want you taking out a $15,000 loan just to go on this trip, right? So I ended up doing a friends and family round. And I was asking friends, like I was asking my mom, I was asking friends to donate. It was like nothing was too small, whether it was $5, $10, $20, what have you, right? So of course mom came through, like some family came through. I mean, it definitely didn't get me to like half of that, right? But it was something. It was a start. The church I was going to at the time, I also asked folks there, and I had wrote out a letter describing like the program and what I planned on doing and why I wanted to do it. And at the end of it, like asking people to donate, right? And there were several people who donate like $150, $20, like people who really believed in it, right? There were also people who didn't donate, but you know, that's their business. But the fact is, there were people who believed in me enough to support this trip. Another pivotal moment was that I actually it was a US funded grant that was specifically for students who are studying abroad, right? And it was something like $10,000. I wish I could remember the name of this because I would definitely call them out, right? And I say call them out because I ended up getting that grant. Miss Woodard helped me rewrite the draft. I think we did like 3 drafts of that application. So soon after I got the grant, I want to say it had to be like 2 weeks. Like it wasn't even that long after. Mali was put on the travel warning list by the US government, right? And we could talk about the countries that are on the US's like travel warning and do not travel list. Y'all, that's a whole nother podcast, and we not even about to get into politics, okay? Because let me tell you, that list needs to be scrutinized. But anywho, so I get this $10,000 grant, right? And remember, the program is like $15,000. So I feel like it was $15,000. So 10,000, I'm like, yo, that's a big chunk, right? So of course I'm like happy, like crying, happy tears, whatever. Within 2 weeks, Mali's put on the travel warning list. Now I say this because this grant was a US government funded grant. And one of the guidelines for it was that the country you were traveling to could not be on the travel warning list or the do not travel list, right? When I tell you, I felt like as soon as Mali was put on that list, like 2 seconds later, I got an email from the woman who was managing the grant and was like, yeah, we got to take this grant back. And so I'm sitting here like, okay, I'm not going to say how I felt at the time. Because we're not going to start this podcast off like that. But when I tell you I was hot, I was like, are you serious right now? Right? And so this is why I say I wish I remembered the name of that grant, because I would have definitely called them out right now. So anywho, because of Mali being placed on the travel warning list, the institution that was hosting the program itself, they also decided to postpone the trip by a year, right? So they were like, we'll do it again in 2011, but let's just give it some time, right? So things cool down in the country and that we're not putting you all in harm's risk, right? I, of course, was devastated because I was like, y'all, I'm ready to go. Like, let's go. I'm an artist and I always wanted to go to Africa. But, after crying and like really sharing my frustrations with Miss Khan and Miss Woodard, they consoled me and were like, they're going to do it again next year. So we're still going to be here with you and we're going to make sure you go on that trip. So fast forward to 2011. The program ends up running again. And so I let the institution know that I actually had a grant to pay for majority of this program, but because Mali got put on the travel warning list, they basically took it away, right? And I had the paperwork to prove it and everything. So what they ended up doing is they actually ended up, I can't quite remember all the details, but I feel like they basically replaced that grant for me because they were like, it wasn't your fault and this happened. The country being placed on the travel warning list just happened to happen at that time. And so, because I was like, y'all, I can't go no more because I had the money and then it was just stripped away. So now I'm like, unless y'all got some scholarships that y'all can help me out to cover what was lost, I cannot go on this trip. And they, I guess my ancestors must have came to them and been like, y'all, she need to be on this trip. So the rest of the trip was funded by friends and family donations, community donations, also like friends of friends. So people who were in my network too. And then I also was working at the time. So I was putting some savings away. And then I did end up taking out a little loan to cover the rest. But I think the loan was like $1,500, y'all. At the time, that felt like so much money to me. But y'all, it was $1,500. That loan got paid back quick, okay? But that was like to cover the remaining costs. So I think out of pocket, I may have paid like a couple thousand, maybe like 2,000 or 3,000, not more than that. I don't think I paid more than that. So that was how that trip was funded. So the trip is set to begin in the fall, right? So we were flying out in September and the trip, I believe, was only for like 3.5 months. So it was September, October, November. I think we were set to come back right before Thanksgiving, I think it was, or something like that. I believe it was like a semester long thing, right? So it was like September to November. And prior to this, we had I think we had like a couple calls, like two, with the faculty member who was leading the trip. So I remember speaking to him like maybe 2 or 3 times before this to go over things to know, like more details about the program, things like that. For me, I was not nervous at all because again, I'm an artist and I always wanted to go to Africa, right? And so now comes the time for us to fly out. And I believe it ended up being like 7 or 8 of us, 8 students. And we were all coming from different colleges. I think maybe like two of the other students were from the same college, another two were from the same, and then everyone else was from like different colleges. Well, I think only one student was from the actual university that was hosting the study abroad program, right? The rest of us were coming from all over. I also want to note that I was the only Black person on the trip, right? This is important to note because my experience, I believe, and I cannot speak for the rest of the students, but from what I observed and from what I felt, my experience was definitely different from theirs. Also, my background, coming from a Caribbean background, coming from a people who speak multiple languages, coming from a people who eat rice and plantains every day, every week, right? Like, there were a lot of things that I did not have to quote unquote adjust to when I got to Mali. And so it's time for us to go in September. I buy my ticket. I fly out of JFK, and the time, I believe it was like a 14-hour flight. I think it was. So I had a layover in Paris, and then from Paris, it was like a quick flight over. And I remember I landed in Bamako, the capital of Mali. I landed there. It had to be like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. And I had traveled the whole way by myself. I didn't link up with any of the other students who were going. And I remember stepping out of the airport, and we found like it was easy to find like the faculty because they had the signs and everything of like who they were looking for, where we were going, what have you. And I remember when we all got into the van to go to the apartment that we were all staying at, I remember looking out the window as we were driving. Because remember, we got there at night, right? So it wasn't like I'm seeing everything, like I'm seeing the city, right? All I'm seeing is like, it was dark. There were like some lights that were lighting up like the small pharmacy or like the small little store, like corner store or whatever. But you couldn't really see the country. But what I could remember distinctly when I got in the van and we started driving, I was like, this feels like Haiti. Like, that's all I kept thinking in my head. I was like, are you sure? And I think I had even asked one of the program people, I had asked them, like, are we in Mali? And of course, I got a response back of like, of course, you're in we're in Bamako. But I just was in disbelief because it reminded me so much of Haiti. So automatically, I was like, oh, this is like home. Like, okay, we good. And so this is the structure of the program. I'm going to give you a quick rundown. So for the 3.5 months, we began all living in one apartment, right? So 8 of us are living in one apartment for, I believe, the first 2.5 weeks. After the 2.5 weeks, we are all assigned different homestays, right? Depending on what art skill we wanted to learn. So when we got to Mali, and even before we even got there, we had the option to see what skills were being offered and to choose which one we wanted to learn, right? So the skills were ceramics, bronze metal casting, dance, photography, instrument and music making. And for those of you who don't know, let me tell you, if you are a musician, like, you need to go to Bamako. The arts run so deep there, but I feel like music, it hits on a totally different level there. Like, if you are a musician, I don't care what type of music you do, you need to go to Bamako, and like the musicians there are on a whole nother level. And I'm talking about traditional musical instruments, but the way it is played and like the depth of the music. I don't even know how to explain it because I'm not a musician, but when you know how you hear music and you be like, that comes from a different type of place. Like that's just how all the music in Mali felt. But I digress. And then another one was traditional wood sculpture. So I chose traditional wood sculpture. And I think I had looked at it when I was still in the States. I was like, okay, I want to do that one. But I was like, I didn't really put much thought to it, right? Because I was just more focused on being in Mali. But then when we got there and when we got to the apartment that we were all staying at, we had to like really solidify what it was we wanted to learn because that was a homestay that we were going to. And so I was like, yes, traditional wood sculpture is what I want to study. Y'all, I ain't never done traditional wood sculpture in my life up to that point. Okay, something in my intuition was like, this is what you need to learn. I can't explain it. I don't feel like I need to explain it. That is what I felt in my spirit. Now, did some of the other ones sound interesting? Yes, they did. Bronze metal casting? I was like, yo, that sounds real cool. Ceramics? That sounds dope too. But something about traditional wood sculpture, my spirit was like, that is what you are here to learn. After the 2.5 weeks, we're all sent to live in our homestay. For everyone else, their homestay, they were actually staying with their teacher. But for me, it was different. Like I was the only one who was staying with a homestay family, but had to travel every day to my teacher's house. So I basically essentially had two families. So there was one family I was with that consisted of the mom and dad, two daughters, and then there's like a community of other families in there, right? Because one thing about Mali that I love, and especially Bamako, and I was in the neighborhood of Nyamakoro, no one is living in a house by themselves. Like your house is connected to other homes, or your house is in close vicinity to other homes. So you're basically living in like, I don't even want to say village because a village can be huge, but you're living in small communities. If you're familiar with Haitian lacus, there would be like a lacu in the middle, right? Which is just an open space, usually where everyone gathers. So that's where you cook. That's where you get the water from the well. That's where the kids play. That's where you hang out, right? And at night, everyone goes into their respective homes. But the laku is like the communal area, right? So when you come out, you're coming out into the laku. In that sense, I think I was very blessed because of the fact I got to basically have two families. And the reason for that was because my teacher actually didn't have space in his home. So they set me up with another family. And I think to walk there, it had to be like maybe 10-15 minute walk. Like it was an easy walk to get there, right? And so after the 2.5 weeks, we all go into our homestays and you stay there for the remainder of the program. There were times, like certain weeks, where we would all come together and go on like cultural trips. So we went to San, which is where a lot of the mud cloth is produced. We went to Djenné, where I got to see the Great Mosque of Djenné. And the only other place I saw the Great Mosque of Djenné was in my art history book when I was taking art history 2 in community college. So you can only imagine how that experience felt. I was like, y'all, I am standing in front of the Great Mosque of It was like a totally different experience for me. I was like, it's kind of like how people, when they see the Eiffel Tower in a book and then they actually go stand in front of it, that's how it was with the Great Mosque of Djenné. Because first of all, the architecture found in Djenné, in San, and even Timbuktu, which we didn't get to go to because there was like a lot of political instability happening around that time, right? But we would have traveled there into Dogon country, which are two places that I still would love to travel to, right? But the architecture and the use of earthen materials, that was the first time I saw structures that were built out of mud, clay, hay, cow dung. I got to feel natural air condition and natural insulation, right? And it just hits different when you walk into a structure like that and you feel how basically the earth gives you everything you need, right? Like Mother Earth just got it. Like we saw all of those cities over a 1.5, 2 week time period, right? So we all got together in the middle of our time in Mali and went on this like excursion. In between that, we also had a professor who was working with the institution, right? So they hired him to be with us the entire time. Sekuba Traore, may he rest in peace. He is now an ancestor. This man was a walking griot. I feel like people talk about griots now, and it's like, yes, this person is a griot. Yes, this person is a griot. When you meet and you hang with and you are speaking with an actual griot, like when I tell you there is a level of wisdom that academia and like studying books just cannot give you. Like there's just a lived experience of having to embody and hold so much generational information that when you stand next to somebody like that, like it's like they're just oozing wisdom. And also everything he spoke, like every time he said something, it was like he spoke in parables. And it would be something so simple. I would ask him like, oh, why does this cost this much or something, right? And he would go into a story that had like this deep meaning. Most of the time I would just chuckle because I was like, yo, Sekuba is funny. Like this man, like it's never just a yes or no response. Like he's giving you wisdom. Now that I've told you the structure of the program, right? So let's get into my particular experience. After the initial apartment stay with everyone, I moved into my homestay family, and for the first time in my life, I had sisters. So in my regular family, I only have brothers, right? So I grew up in a house with just brothers. But now in this homestay, I had two younger sisters because I ended up being the oldest. So I had one sister who was like 2 years younger than me, and the other one, she had to be like 8 or something. And so the mom and the dad, and sidebar, it is a very wild experience because prior to this, the only other country I had visited was Haiti. And so I'm with my aunts and my uncles. We all speak in Creole, what have you. Fast forward now, I'm in Mali. This is my first time on the continent, first time in the motherland. I can visually see that I look like everybody, right? Like, and I'm not just saying, oh, I'm black, they black, whatever. Like, our features are very similar. Okay, very similar. And it is very jarring, or it was very jarring for me at 19 to be on the continent. I'm looking at people who look like my aunt. They look like my sister. They look like my cousin, my brother. They're speaking to me and I cannot speak back. That is a very jarring experience. Like it was so jarring to me that it was frustrating. Like I was pissed. Because people would naturally come up to me. And this is a funny thing. When we were traveling as a group, so when it was like all 8 of us traveling, like me and the other students who were also participating in the program, many of the kids, like what you would assume, they would run up to and they were all majority white, right? So many of the young Malian kids would run up to them and be like, oh my God, like it was kind of funny. Like they were touching their skin. Like, look at her skin. They were like touching their hair. It was a little comical, I'm not gonna lie. But no one came up to me. And for 1 second, I was like, why is nobody coming up to me? Like, I love kids. And then it hit me, girl, because you look like they sister. Like, why are they gonna run up to you and be like, oh my God, hey, like you look like you from around the corner. Okay, so the benefit to that was that I was able to maneuver through, I feel like throughout the spaces that I traveled to in the country without that barrier of there's the foreigner. Right. Now, there were obviously people who would start to talk and be like, she is not speaking Bambara, which is what everyone spoke. Right. I don't care what y'all say about French being the the national language. Wasn't nobody speaking French, okay? Unless you were in a bank or something, wasn't nobody speaking French. It was easier, I would say, on me to navigate because one, I just look like everybody. So half the time, if I just kept my mouth shut, like people didn't really look twice at me and be like, oh, there's a foreigner, let's go sell her something or something like that, right? So then being in my host family, I blended right in, right? That being said, the culture of Mali is very much it's very similar to Haitian culture in that greeting people is very important. Like you will not walk into somewhere and not open your mouth, right? And speak and say hi, how are you? Like that is an absolute no-no, right? You walk into somewhere, you are opening your mouth to speak. And that goes for walking into the house and walking throughout the neighborhood, okay? Because I learned I learned some lessons. The other culture is that Malian people, from my experience, are very much into their culture, which is what I appreciated. So the friends that I ended up making there, they were very much into Malian music, Malian artists, Malian politics. Like a majority of our conversation, they were talking about their country and what they enjoyed about it. Yes, there were times where they were like, oh, do you know like some Rihanna songs or something like that? But that was literally only like twice. Every other time, they were like, we gonna put you on to this Malian music. We gonna talk to you about this aspect of our culture. We're gonna teach you these words. Like they were very much into their culture. But another thing about the friends that I made there, a lot of them were well traveled. So a lot of them had been to Europe. Some of them had been to South America. None of them really had an interest in going to America. Which I also thought was comical. I was like, thank God. Like, it was a relief because I was like, I'm glad that they're not like, oh yeah, I really want to like be in America and like, like they were like, if we have the opportunity to go, okay, but if not, like we're good. All of them spoke multiple languages, from French to Arabic. One friend even tried to teach me Arabic using the Quran. Let me tell you, I was like, I need formal education, sir, because the way these characters are set up in Arabic, I'm so distracted by how beautiful they are that I cannot pay attention to the grammatical lessons you're trying to give me, right? So that was not going to happen, right? And Mali is a country that I want to say at the time there were more Muslims. There was a higher percentage of Muslims, and then the second highest was Christian, and then there were like traditional African spiritual practices as well. But the family I stayed with is a Muslim family, right? And that was the first time I actually stayed with a Muslim family. And I will credit them. And not like I also didn't have any expectations of like, oh, I'm staying with Muslims, like this is gonna be totally different, whatever. Like I didn't have, y'all, I'm an artist and I wanted to go to Africa, y'all. I came so open. And this is what I tell people: when you travel, stay open, because you don't know what the experiences are going to teach you. Yes, you have an intention and a goal of something you want to do, but just stay open. So I had no issues that they were Muslim, okay? Like I was like, y'all, we all one big family. Okay. And my host mom even asked me a couple times. She was like, do you want to go to church on Sunday? Because the neighbor is Christian and, you know, you can go to church with her. I was like, no, it's not that serious. Like, I'm fine being with y'all, right? I was like, shoot, we can even go to the mosque. Like, I'm fine. Because I had also been to a mosque before in the States. So to me, it wasn't nothing like out of the ordinary. Being with the homestay family, I was hanging out with the sister who was like 2 years younger than me. I was hanging out with her a lot because we were close in age. So her friends instantly became my friends. And the way she introduced me to her friends was just by telling me, oh yeah, we're going to go somewhere. Like, I think it was a Saturday. And she's like, yeah, I'm going to take you somewhere. And I'm like, all right, let's go. Right? My extroverted self. And we end up at this gate and she knocks for us to be let in. The gate opens and I see no less than 20 of her friends like lined up in a yard, right? Now, at this very moment, everyone's looking at me. The sister who I was with, her name is Mama. Well, that was her nickname that we called her, right? And so all of her friends are like, Mama, hindi so my kakene. Right? They're greeting her, how are you? Good morning. And then all eyes come to me. Now imagine 20 people, each person got 2 eyes, right? All those eyes are now looking at me. And at this point, I think I had been in a homestay like a week, y'all. It probably wasn't even a week. And all these people come rushing to me. Because one thing I love about my Malian family and my Malian people, okay, is the hospitality, honey. Yo, I feel like the moment I touched down in Mali, like the country just gave me a big hug, right? And was like, come child, like we welcome you. Okay, like it just from the moment I got there to the moment I left, like I just felt like the entire country was just giving me a hug. So all 20 of these friends come rushing to me. And this is why I say I'm an extrovert. Because y'all, if I was an introvert, I would have ran out that gate and back to the house, okay? But because I am who I am, yo, I took one look from right to left. I was like, let's do this. In my head, I was like, let's do this. So now everybody's coming up to me. Oh, what's your name? Now, mind you, they're all speaking Bambara, right? Because they don't yet know that I'm not fluent in it yet, right? And Mama's like, she doesn't speak Bambara yet. Like so then they start speaking French, right? And I'm like, y'all, my head hurting. My relationship to French is very interesting. Okay, French is what it is, but all that conjugation makes my head hurt. Okay, but I can get by with it. But then they start noticing, like, I guess my face was like, French. So then they start speaking English, honey. And I'm like, yo, this is what I'm talking about. Now, mind you, some of them weren't totally fluent in English, but the ones who weren't fluent, they were speaking French, and we could all understand each other at the end of the day. So these group of people became my friends throughout my entire stay. So part of being in the homestay is we get to practice our Bambara lessons. So when we first touched down in Mali, the first 2 weeks that we were all in the apartment together, we had Bambara lessons. And so for me, what I've learned is that I pick up traditional languages very quickly. So if it's like Bambara or Twi or Swahili, like any of those languages that don't have like heavy amounts of conjugation and structure, I can pick them up very easily. So in the first 2 weeks, we were learning the grammar and the structure of Bambara. Now this got put to the test once we got to our homestay. Okay, because now the lesson, like we still had lessons, I think once a week, but now I was being constantly surrounded by people who spoke Bambara. Right. And so for I would say the first 5 days, my host mom entertained me by speaking French. She would speak French to me, and she was telling me like, okay, when you wake up, this is what you are to do. Like, you're not to greet anyone or speak before you brush your teeth and wash your face, right? She was like, don't even open your mouth and say hi to nobody until you clean your mouth, okay? Which I thought was really hilarious, because the first time I was like so eager to greet everybody, and she was just pointing to the bathroom. She was like, and you need to go wash your face. And then as soon as I came out the shower, she was like, Hindi sogoma, ikake. Like, she turned into this totally different person. She was like so ready to greet me then. And then she, of course, explained right after. So this is the culture in Mali. Like, when you wake up, you don't just go like speaking off the cuff. Like, go wash your face, go brush your teeth, go clean up, and then you can come out and like greet everybody. And she did it in a very loving way. So she entertained me by speaking French the first 5 days. On the 6th day, she says to me, I no longer speak French. I only speak Bambara. And now I'm sitting here like, okay, but just last night you was speaking French to me. So what happened? Right. And she repeated again. She was like, I no longer speak French. I speak Bambara. So if you are going to speak, speak Bambara. And she knew I was still learning. So she was like, even if you get it wrong, still practice. Like, even if you have to walk around with your sheet, like walk around with your sheet. Cause I had a packet of like Bambara vocab words, and she was like, walk around with that sheet, and even if there's something you don't know, look on the sheet and practice using the words, right? Because that's how you're gonna learn it. Now, I ain't gonna lie, for the first 2 minutes I was terrified. I was like, now we was on a nice flow, and now all of a sudden you don't speak this other language, okay? But I realized later the blessing of what she did. So she was basically giving me like a sped up course in like language immersion. From then on, she did only speak Bambara, but she would speak it at a pace, like at a learner's pace. So she wasn't like speaking 90 miles an hour. Like she would speak it in a way that like, okay, I could slowly follow along. By that second week, she did something else. She then started making me run errands to buy ingredients for breakfast. So I would have to get up. So my schedule with my teacher, it started, I believe, maybe 2 weeks after I moved into the homestay, right? So I had time to acclimate to my family before having to then study traditional wood sculpture with my teacher. So in that time period, she then started making me responsible for buying breakfast items. Now, this is how she justified it, right? So I wake up one day, we're on our Bambara thing, right? Because she don't speak French. She gives me some money and she's like, you're going to go buy the sugar, the coffee, and the corn. I think it was cornmeal I was buying, right? Because they also ate cornmeal for breakfast. It was like a sweet version. So it was like milk and sugar instead of the savory one that I was used to back home called maimoulin. And so she was like, you're going to buy these ingredients from the guy who sells them. And she gave me the directions. She was like, you're going to go outside the house, make a right, you're going to go straight, you're going to cross the street, and you're going to see him standing right there. This is his name, and this is what you are to buy from him. Now, mind you, just a couple days ago, she stopped speaking French, right? And now I'm responsible for buying breakfast items. I was like, hold on. I was like, ma'am. And she was like, I have to make breakfast for the whole, like for the household. So we don't have time for this you not going business, right? And I didn't tell her I wasn't going. I was just like, well, can you come with me? And she was like, no, I have to start the fire, right? For the breakfast. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll wait for Mama, my sister. I'll wait for her to come with. No, Mama's getting herself ready and I need to start the breakfast now. So now I'm looking at her like, yo, she trying me. She trying me, right? But then this is where my extrovertedness comes in, right? Because eventually she was like, I have to start breakfast, so I need these ingredients and you're holding me up. And so eventually I comply. And so I walk out, reluctantly. I walk out of our compound and I take all of the directions she gave me. And sure enough, I see the man who I'm supposed to buy the breakfast items from. This first instance turns into now my daily task is to buy breakfast items. So I now start to see this man every single day. He also knows that I'm learning Bambara, so he's also practicing Bambara with me. As I'm on my way to see him, I'm seeing Mama's friends who are now my friends. They're yelling at me, hey, good morning, how are you, whatnot. Also on the way to see him, I am greeting every single one of the neighbors who are outside. If I can see their face, I am to greet them. Because there was one neighbor who I was on my way to see my teacher. I swear she was not outside, y'all. I swear she was not outside. I come home that evening from working with my teacher, and my host mom was like, so, how was your day? All that. I was like, yeah, it was good. We're speaking Bambara. And she's like, so the neighbor, so-and-so, whose name I can't remember right now, she was like, she said you passed her and you didn't say nothing. Like, you didn't open your mouth not once when you passed her house this morning. I was like, what? I didn't see nobody. There was nobody there. She was like, no. She was outside and she said you walked right past her house and you didn't say nothing. Now, there is no arguing with a black mama, okay? I just knew in that moment, I was like, okay, how can I make this right? Because there's no know, like, mind you, I swear she wasn't outside, but I was like, that don't matter at this point. So she says, we're going to walk to the neighbor's house. She then takes me by the hand and we walk right back out the house. Mind you, this is after a full day's of work. We walk right outside the house, go down the street to this neighbor's house and stop in front of her door. She calls out to the woman and she's like, hey, are you home? And the lady's like, yes, I'm here. She said, okay, come out. And so my host mom turns to me and she's like, this is the neighbor. You didn't see her? I was like, no, I walked right past. I didn't see her. And she was like, well, when you walk past her house, you were to make sure you say good morning. You ask her how she's doing. You greet her, right? Talk about cultural immersion lesson 101. Okay, so best believe every time I pass by her house moving forward, when I tell you my head was inside her door, I was like, oh, I don't care if you behind your front door. Like, I will make sure I yell out a greeting into your compound. And she thought it was the funniest thing, like when I first started doing it, because I was like, what's not gonna happen is I'm not gonna come home and somebody gonna tell me I was being rude. That taught me the importance of being seen. During my time in Mali, there is a particular way that people are being seen and recognized and valued as humans. Like, so the importance of greeting is not just, oh, to be nice and so that people say that you're not rude. It's like you're really seeing the person, because the greetings in Mali, they last, first of all, they can last anywhere from 2 minutes to 10 minutes. Okay. Because when you greet, you're not just saying good morning, how are you? You're asking about the family, you're asking about the kids, you're asking about the grandparents, you're asking about the school, you're asking about job. Like, all of that happens in that greeting. When you see a greeting that goes on for 10 minutes, work of art, okay? Like, I watched it in awe, and I was just like, that is how you see somebody, okay? And that is why to this day, when I say good, when I walk into anywhere and I greet people and nobody says anything, I'm like, who raised y'all? Like, who raised y'all up in here? Rude. Because Mali was a place that really taught me how to value people and just see them for their humanity. So now I want to talk about the schedule that I had during the study abroad program. So the way it was set up was, when you decide what you want to learn, you're matched with the teacher, and then you basically take on their schedule. So I was matched with my teacher, Batreore, and we had a schedule of Monday through Friday. And we would start at 7 o'clock in the morning. It could have been 6:30, but it was like 7 in the morning until he said we were done. So it wasn't like, oh, I'm going into work from like 9 to 5, or I'm going into work from like 7:30 to 3. No, it was like, we come in the morning when the sun is out, and then we just work till either we can't see anything anymore, like it gets too dark, or he says we're done for the day. And that was usually around, I want to say like 6 o'clock at night. It had to be like 5:30, 6 o'clock at night. And towards the end of our time together, it started getting longer because we were finalizing our work. So like there was one night, I think I came home at like 8 o'clock. Like it was pitch black. So 7 o'clock, I would be at his house, and I would walk to his house from my homestay family's house, which took about 10-15 minutes. The entire walk there, I'm greeting everybody. So from the store, the corner store clerk who I saw every day, to the neighbors, to their neighbors, right? It got to the point where people started seeing me consistently, and then people started to be like, hey, what's your name? Like, are you from here? Like, and I would explain to people like, no, I came here to study. And they were like, really? And I said, yeah, I came here to study wood sculpture, and that's my teacher. And everybody knew everybody. Okay, so y'all know how like the old folks be talking about how it used to be in the neighborhoods here in the States, like in the black neighborhoods, like everybody knew everybody and everybody looked like, that's how it was in Mali. Even in 2011, everybody knew everybody. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to study with my teacher. And they're like, oh yeah, we know Bob, we know him. And a lot of people, really everyone who I spoke to, they were actually very happy that I had come there to study and learn this skill, right? Like they weren't even like, oh, do you think you could do it? Well, I'm not sure. We don't see many young women come and learn, like none of that. They were happy that I had come back to West Africa, specifically to Mali, to learn this traditional skill and really dedicate this time. And that happened throughout my stay in Mali, where I would constantly get an affirmation from strangers of like, welcome back. Like, we're happy you're here. We're happy that you took the time to come here to learn about our culture. We embrace you. Like, that message was constant throughout. So on the way to his house, I'm greeting everybody. Once I got to his house, because I would already have had breakfast at my homestay. So once I get to his house, we begin to work. I think he would then take out the tools that we needed for today. He would set up the work area, because I think he was just getting like finished and wrapped up with his breakfast. And then once he set out the tools and like took his spot, we were going. And so let me break down for you what it's like learning traditional wood sculpture as someone who grew up in the States, in the West, in public school, and learning in that way. So when I get there, now mind you, he actually had me observe him for like a week and a half. So I would wake up, be at his house at like 7 o'clock, and he would pull out a chair and have me sit. Like I would sit in the chair and he'd have me watch him. So I'm talking about from 7 o'clock, we would break for lunch around, I want to say like 12 or something, like the standard lunchtime. And we'd eat for like 30 minutes. And then we wash our hands and then go right back to work. But for this first week and a half, he just had me observe. I also want to mention for the first week and a half, my professor Sekuba, the griot I spoke of, he would also accompany me because my teacher Batreore spoke no English, spoke no French. All he spoke was Bambara. So if I had any chance of communicating with him, I had to become fluent in Bambara. Sekuba was there as the translator. So he would, and I eventually found this out later, like he would be joking with my teacher because Sekuba knew that I had never had any wood sculpting experience. And even he was like, so you're here to learn wood sculpture? And I was like, yes. And he was like, okay. And he would go back and forth. Like I would listen to him talking back and forth with my teacher, and they would be like laughing and joking. And you know how you could tell like somebody joking, like they cracking jokes on you? I could sense that, but it didn't feel like a mean way. It felt like they just didn't understand. Like that's exactly how I felt when I was listening to them. I was like, they just don't understand yet. They just don't get it. And so I would listen to them laugh, knowing that some of that laughter was jokes that they were saying about me. And so after a week and a half, I start to get a little irritated, right? So that I start to ask my teacher, I asked Sekuba, I was like, when am I going to get to start? Right now, as I look back on it, I laugh because I'm like, child, sit down. So, but I had to learn, right? And so I would ask Sekuba, like, when do I get to start? Like, I'm coming here every day and I'm just watching him. Like, I'm ready to start, right? And Sekuba then asked me, well, what is it that you want to create? And I said, you know what? I'm not sure yet. And Sekuba was like, well, Ba is saying that you should do a chair. Now, one of the traditional chairs that you could do in wood sculpture in Mali, it's basically like two flat slabs, and one of them has a hole in it that you would then put one of the slabs, like you would not chisel down, but you would like shave down one of the ends and basically slide it into the other piece of the wooden slab, and it creates like a chair. Very basic, y'all. When I tell you this thing was basic, I was like, absolutely not. That is not what I came over here. That is not the traditional wood sculpture that I want to learn. So in this time frame, we happened to go, I believe it was as a group, like all the students came back together and we happened to go to the National Museum of Art of Mali, right? And so it's situated inside of a beautiful park. So we go inside and we get to the area that has all the wood sculpture, all of the traditional wood sculpture of Mali. I come across, or let's say I come upon, the Chiwara wood sculpture. Everyone, if you have ever been to any type of African art section in a museum, you have seen this sculpture. So it's basically a sculpture of an antelope, and the name is Chiwara. That is the name that they call it in Mali. Now, some places may translate it as antelope or like, I don't know, West African wood sculpture, but the name is Chiwara, Chiwara. So if you look it up, you'll see what it looks like, and it represents the antelope. So I come across this wood sculpture in the museum, and I'm like, that's it. Like, I see it, it connects with my spirit, and y'all, again, I don't feel the need to explain this. I don't feel like I have to explain it. And my spirit was like, that is it. That is what you are to create. So we go to a like cultural center / hangout spot. And in the library, there was a book on like Malian wood sculpture. So I go in the book and I'm looking for the Chiwara. I find it and I take a photocopy of it because I don't think I could check out the book just yet. So I take a photocopy of it. So the next time I go to my teacher's house, I show him this paper, and I'm with Sekuba, the professor, right? So I show both of them this paper. I'm like, this is the sculpture I want to make. Now I watch as Bai is looking at the paper, and I can see in his face, he's like, I don't know about this, right? Like, you know how you could tell people's expression, right? Like, he was just like, but I could tell he's also trying to be polite. So he doesn't outright say no, but I could tell by his facial expression. He's like, what? And Sekubai is like, this is what you want to create? I was like, yes, this is the sculpture I want to create. So what Bai ends up doing is he ends up giving me a test. And I only realized this after the fact. So this is how it works. Or this is how it worked for me learning traditional wood sculpture. And I have to preface that this program had been done, I think, 2 other times before. And the 2 other people who had studied traditional wood sculpture with Ba, they made chairs, right? Like, they were just fine making the basic chair or what have you. For me, that was not going to cut it. So that was why he initially suggested a chair, right? Because I had asked him, like, why out of all the things, why would you suggest a chair? And it was because the 2 previous students, I guess, couldn't do anything more intricate, so he had them just do a chair. And so now I'm telling him I want to do this Chiwara. The next week, he comes with 2 pieces of wood. And so the way I learned there was Ba had his own set of tools, right, that he had been working with for decades, okay? I could not use his tools because he stated to me that my hands had to shape my tools. So that is why I could not use his, because his hands had already shaped his tools. So it wouldn't fit in my hand. Like, it would feel odd in my hand, which was accurate. So he had to have tools made for me. And the tools looked identical to his, but they just looked more new. So the tools that we had were very large. I would say like they were the length of my forearm, right? So it wasn't these delicate, like cute little small hand chisel tools. Like, these were like hacking type tools, right? So he has a set specifically made for me. And then he has 2 pieces of wood that he has bought, right, from the guy who he buys his wood from. What I immediately noticed about these 2 pieces of wood is that mine's is softer. So there's hardwood, like if you know ebony wood, like ebony wood is known to be very hard. And then you have softer and softer woods like below ebony. And so I had like the softest of the soft. Like, this wood, I felt if you just like chipped it wrong, like you would end up with mulch. Like, that's how soft, that is how soft this wood was, right? Whereas Ba's wood was the wood that is actually used to make the Chihuahua sculpture. And that wood it was explained to me, it's a type of wood that's used to make matchsticks in Mali. So it's not hard, but it's also not soft, and it's slightly moist, right? So it's not a dry wood. I was touching his wood and touching mine, and I was like, these are not the same. And he was like, no, they are. Right. And we're kind of speaking like a broken, like French Bambara situation, because I had still not become fluent. And I was like, yeah, these woods are not the same. Right. So what he has me do is he has my tools made, and he basically lays it out in front of me, and he's like, you are to watch me. When I cut, you cut. So those are my instructions on how to learn traditional wood sculpture, okay? When I cut, you cut. That was my instruction. So now in my head, I'm like, okay, eventually he's going to bring out the ruler. Like, we're going to have some measuring tape. We probably going to sketch it out on some paper. Like, this is what it's supposed to look like. We're going to have some accurate dimensions. That never happened, y'all. It was I cut, you cut. So my observation skills now had to be on like 1,000, because I'm sitting across from him. I'm watching how he's sitting. I'm watching how he's holding the tool. When the tool hits the wood, I'm like, was it angled? When it chipped the wood, how did it make a straight cut, or did it chisel the wood, or like, was it a curve cut? I'm talking about 4 or 5 things are going on in my head, all as I am observing him. And it helps that I was with him day in and day out, because I really got to sharpen my observation skills. There was not a lot of talking. The only time there was talking really was when he was instructing me on maybe how to fix my hand, like holding the tool, or how to position the wood like under my foot, or when he was like, all right, it's time to break for lunch. But in between that, there was very little talking. There was a lot of observation, and you would be hearing the chopping of wood. And so I'm following along with him, and he's making a sculpture that at the beginning of it, I don't know what it's going to come out to be. So, because remember, this is the test sculpture that I realized was a test. Because at first I thought we were making the Chihuahua. I was like, the Chihuahua is the one I want to make. So he was like, okay, we're going to make a sculpture. He doesn't tell me what it is, but as we're sculpting it, I'm like, this is not the form of the Chihuahua, but it's also not the form of the chair. So I was like, okay, he didn't try me and give me a basic chair, because I told him I wasn't making that. So I could tell it was something else. So as we're chiseling it, it ends up being a sculpture of a woman holding a baby in front of her. So we were sculpting this piece for about, I want to say a week, or it had to be like 5 days, because I was with him Monday through Friday. So we started on a Monday, ended on a Friday. When I tell you, we sculpted the exact same sculpture. And I believe he was so amazed that I don't think he had words, right? And I took a picture, and I still have a picture of this to this day. I put our sculptures side by side, identical. Now, mind you, his wood was the right type of wood that you would need to actually make the sculpture in a way that would preserve it. Like mine, the wood was so soft that it wouldn't really last long, because the wood it was too soft of a wood. But regardless of the fact, our pieces were identical. So Sekuba comes and he sees this and he's like, okay. So you sculpted this? I was like, well, yeah, you see anybody else here? Besides, and me and Sekuba have that playful relationship, right? But I'm like, it was literally me and Ba sculpting this. So now Ba sees that I can follow along and keep up with him. So guess what happened the very next week? I came there the following week, and it was 2 brand new pieces of wood. They were bigger, they were wider, and they were the exact same. They were the exact same wood that was used to make matchsticks. So they're not too hard, not too soft, and a little bit moist, right? And it was light in color. So it wasn't like a dark brown wood. It was very light in color. So we proceed for the next 4 weeks to sculpt what would be the male Chihuahua? And it's the male because it doesn't have the baby on the back. So for 4 weeks, it was I cut, you cut. So imagine week after week. And in between this time, I end up becoming fluent in Bambara, right? That is due to my host mom sending me on shopping trips, my sister introducing me to her friends, and us constantly hanging out, like when I wasn't at work. Right? That's what I called it when I would be with Ba, when I wasn't at work. That would be through people on the street talking to me, right? Because remember, I'm looking like everybody, right? Like I'm seeing my auntie and my cousins and everybody walking down the street. So I definitely have people just walking up talking to me. I want to say like 3-4 weeks in, I become fluent, right? Because I'm constantly practicing, like constantly talking to people, right? This is the benefit of being extroverted, traveling by yourself. When you're in a space learning a skill already, like this is another benefit. So 4 weeks, we proceed to create the male Chihuahua. After the 4 weeks, we're now coming to like almost the end of the program. And you know how I mentioned in the first part of this episode, yeah, I had already called home and was like, y'all, I found my people. Like, I'm good. Like, just send me $20 every week through Western Union. Like, just wire me the money. I'm good. I'm staying here, right? So because I got royally cussed out by my mom, and she was like, yeah, I don't know what you drinking, but that's not about to happen. So what I would do is I kept extending my trip. So I extended my trip so much so to where I asked my teacher Ba if we could make, because he showed me when he saw how I did the male Chihuahua, he was like, do you want to make the female version? And I was like, well, yeah, what does it look like? Right. And he shows me a small version that he's made. And I'm like, yo, let's do it. And so that proceeded to be another 4 weeks. So the sculpting only took 3 weeks. And the last week was for all of the detail and the line work that went into the decorative aspect of the sculpture. Right. Can you imagine that? Like the decorative lines? That all literally took a week, y'all. Like Monday through Friday, we was just doing lines. Like we were just putting lines in the sculpture. Okay, I'm still fascinated by that all these years later. So I ended up making, again, an identical female Chihuahua to his. And the only instructions I had, I cut, you cut. I cut, you cut. That was all. Like I promised y'all, he gave me no other instructions. So at the end of this, so we having conversation. He's like, who is your teacher back home? And I was like, my teacher back home? Like I'm like, I got a lot. Like I was in community college. So I'm like, I got like 5 teachers a semester. Like, what does he mean? He's like, no, your wood sculpting teacher. And I'm like, oh, I don't have one. And he's like, what? And at the time, my language teacher was also there, right? So she would come see me once a week. And this particular week, she met me at my teacher's house. And she was even like, wait, you don't have a wood sculpting teacher? I was like, no, like I came here to learn it. Like this is the first time. And she's like, wait, but you created these things. Like, what do you mean you don't have a teacher back home? I was like, I don't have a teacher back home, right? In this moment, something... I want to say it's kind of like how you get goosebumps. I was like, something feels funny right now. Like as I'm telling them I don't have a teacher. And later on, this has to be like when I'm back home, it hits me because it was so like such a goosebump feeling that it was a little scary. Like, wait a second, someone has done this before. And when that thought came to me, I said, okay, let me ask my mom, who in our lineage has done this? So I'm asking my mom, who was a wood sculptor in our family? Like, it wasn't my granddad. Like, it wasn't her dad because he was a farmer his entire life. So I was like, was it his dad? Like, who was it, a cousin? Someone in our lineage has done wood sculpting before. And she even started thinking real hard. She was like, wait, let me think. No, because my dad's dad, no, he didn't do it. Like she was really trying to think hard. And she was like, I can't think of anybody. In that moment, I was like, someone in my lineage has done this, but we just don't know who it was. So from as far back as my mom can remember, right? And she's kind of like the griot of our family. I was like, she doesn't know. The people she can go back to, they didn't do this. But I was like, someone in our lineage has done this, because the way this skill came out of my hands, y'all, I was like, ain't no way. Like, I am not fooled that this is me. Because there were several people who had saw, like when I came back to the States, they saw what I made and they were like, oh, you're a master at this. And I was like, first of all, I just sat with a master for like 8 weeks, honey. Like, no. I'm like, I appreciate y'all saying that my work is like of a certain caliber, but I'm not fooled to think that I just sat with somebody for 8 weeks and now I'm a master. Nah, because this man been doing this his whole life. So I'm not even going to disrespect him like that. But I also recognize that this was something that was already being done in my lineage. So I don't know who the person is, what their name is, but I know for a fact in my heart of hearts and in my spirit that someone in my lineage was a wood sculptor. This cultural immersion study trip was a way for me to connect that. And I'm eternally grateful, because I think about it often. I'm like, when else would I have known that the skill was deep within me, right? And that's another reason why I encourage Black creatives to really travel and learn traditional skills. Because for one, you never know what can come through you that maybe has been laying dormant, or maybe is like a part of your ancestry that you just didn't know that you had that skill. So it's to the point where now, if I have a piece of wood and I start to like hack away at it and like carve, it's like a muscle memory comes back within like 30 minutes, to where my hand and my arms are like, oh yeah, we know this. And since that trip, I have traveled one other time to a different country, which I'll talk about in another episode, to also learn wood sculpture. And it was the same thing. I cut, you cut. But then it was also, as I was doing it, it was like there was a muscle memory within my body that just knew how to do the thing. I cannot explain it. I don't need to explain it. But I just know that this is part of my lineage. I want to also share a few things about the culture as well. A few more things about the culture. One, I talked about in the first episode, the importance of greeting people, right? The importance of speaking to people and honoring their humanity. But throughout this trip, I was also very interested in the food. One, I always be eating. Okay, everybody know I'm always hungry. You know, I was not starved as a kid, but I was very well fed, actually. And I was interested in the food. One, because they do eat rice in Mali, but I remember there were a couple dishes that I remember having a lot. So one was tigadegena, which is the peanut stew. And let me tell you something, when you go to a West African market and you see a woman grinding peanuts from the nut into the creamy paste that then gets, y'all, it hit different. When I tell you, and this is the other thing, when I travel and I'm eating, my palate just changes, okay? Like, people may think I'm bougie or like I can only eat certain things, y'all, but I'm sorry. When you have fresh ground, like I'm talking about hand ground peanut butter, like nothing in a jar can compare. So tiga degena was one, because that was a peanut stew that I would often have a lot in my homestay. And then another dish it actually wasn't a dish, it was tea. So I was introduced to like I say tea ceremony, but it really was like a way of having tea with friends, or even with family members, which is what you would do usually like in the early evening, late evening, where you would brew a small like pot of tea. But there was like this whole artistic way of like pouring the tea and like bringing it high up in the air. In most places that have a tea culture, they know like what I'm talking about. But we usually had 3 rounds, and there was like a proverb to go with every round, right? Where the first one was like bitter, middle one was in between, but the last one was like sweet, like friendship. Like that's the one proverb one that I could remember. But each stage had a proverb that was associated with the type of flavor. But let me tell you, tea pouring in West Africa is a skill. But it was really something I enjoyed because I usually had it when I was like hanging out with my friends or like hanging out with the family in the courtyard at night. And those are things that I miss because what I remember specifically about being in Bamako, eating was so communal, right? There was no like, I'm going to take my plate, like I'm going to fix myself a plate and go sit at a table. That was just not allowed and not customary at all, right? And so let me also say, when I was in my homestay, I had my own separate room. So there was the main family home, and then like right across the courtyard, the Laku area, like was my room. And I was never in my room. The only time I can remember being in my room, like when I wasn't sleeping, was when I was sick. Like I was sick like one time for about 3 days. I don't know what it was. It wasn't even like food poisoning or anything. It was just like I was just sick. And I think maybe something was going around because like my teacher was also sick, but it ended up passing and I was fine. But there's no such thing as like, there is a such thing, but it's not allowed. So let's say, for instance, I would be reading a book because while I was there, I had brought like 2 books for me to read, and I would be in my room like really engrossed in these books, right? Like they were good books. And multiple times, my sister, my homestay mom, my homestay dad, they would come up to the door of my room and be like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm just reading." And they'd be like, "No, like, are you sick? Like, is everything okay?" I'm like, "No, this book is like really good. This is what it's about." Like, I would start to talk and they were like, "But come read it out here." And I was really confused. I was like, "No, but I'm just reading my book. Like, I don't need to be outside." But what my homestay dad eventually explained to me, he was like, here in Mali, we don't like, there is no you're just sitting by yourself alone. He's like, unless you're sick and like something is really wrong, you're never like not with the family. So he was like, even if you want to read, like come out here and read around us, right? Not like read the book to them, but like just sit in the vicinity of everyone else and read. So there is no like separation type of thing. He was like, even if when we're watching TV, if you don't want to watch TV, you could sit like right outside the door. But he was like, there is no, I'm going to my room and I'm going to close the door type of thing that we do in the States. Like that's just not a thing, right? And I remember later on reading Sabanfu Some's work, she's now an ancestor, but she is someone who very much inspires the work that I do, and I see her as one of the people whose work is like at the foundation of what I build off of, where she explained in one of her books as well that it is very odd to be in a community, like in a village, because she is from Burkina Faso, and she was saying how it looks very strange when someone in the community in the village goes off to be by themselves. Like, so she would explain it as either you're really sick or like something is wrong, because it just doesn't make sense in the communal space for you to then go off and be by yourself. And she explained it in a way, and I can't remember right now what book it was that I read it in. And I remember when I read it, I was like, oh, that's why my homestay dad was looking at me crazy when I was like, I'm just reading a book. Like, I'm just in my room. And he was like, and no one, let me say this, they never made me feel bad about the way I was being, right? So my homestay family and our neighbors, like the people who we shared the compound with, they never made me feel bad when I was behaving in a way that was, let's say, more Western. But they always took the time to explain to me why it seems, why it was off in Malian culture. So like he took the time to explain to me, like, this is why when you're reading a book, like, come be next to us because it looks very strange when you're off by yourself, right? And I also learned that the student who was there previously, she was very much, I guess, a loner. So like she would come back home after studying and would just go straight to her room. And they thought that was like the oddest thing. Like they really looked at her like she was very strange, right? And that's probably because she had her own thing. Like she was probably an introvert. Like she probably wasn't, as able to like get used to the culture like I was. So I was like, it's no fault of her own. But they were very much like she was strange, right? So this whole trip of me going to study abroad in Mali, West Africa, learning traditional wood sculpture when I was like 19, 20, this was so pivotal to me because this trip was the first time that I had ever traveled to learn something. Like the sole purpose of the trip was to learn something and to leave having like acquired a skill. Throughout this program, which the program was only 3.5 weeks, but I ended up extending my stay to where I was there for 5 months, y'all. And the only reason I came back is because I ran out of money and no one would wire me not even $20 through Western Union. Shame on them. They would not wire me any money, which was a concerted effort for them to get me back to the States, okay? Because they knew I was not coming back. I made friends that I still talk to this day. My host family is still like, so you need to get your butt back here, y'all, and I have plans for that very soon. Even my teacher, my wood sculpting teacher, he was like, yo, when you come back, we're gonna make masks, we're gonna make all it. Like, this is the same teacher who, when I got there, wanted me to make a simple chair, right? So you see how far we've progressed. Sekou Traore is now an ancestor, so he has passed away in between this time, and I honor him and everything he taught me through the sharing of my work as well, because he later on told me, when I asked him after I made both of the wood sculptures I made, we were having conversation one day, and I asked him, I was like, when we first got to my teacher's house and you were talking to him and y'all were laughing, this is when I could tell that they were like joking about me. I was like, what were you saying to him? And he was like, well, I was joking that like you were a little delulu. He didn't say delulu, but that's basically like what it was. Like if we translate it into today's way of speaking, he was like, you were a little delulu. Like you came here telling him you wanted to make a chihuahua and you had no like background in wood sculpting. And he said, I told him that you put too much flour in your mouth that your saliva can't soak. Now, remember I told you this guy speaks in Proverbs, right? So I said, wait, say that again? He said, you put too much flour in your mouth that your saliva can't soak. Basically, like you bit off more than you could chew. That proverb now lives on my right forearm, right? And that I got that after I found out Sekou transition. So I got that in honor of him and to remind myself that you thought I put too much flour in my mouth that my saliva can't soak, but I proved you wrong, okay? And we had a nice laugh after all that because I was like, I knew you were talking about me. And he was like, no, but you did it. Like you actually like proved all of us wrong, right? So we had a real nice laugh after that. And I left Mali. I left with like so much pride. Well, let me just say this. I left like telling everybody I was Malian, okay? I have no shame. And I know deep down in my ancestry, Mali is there, okay? And my ancestors guided me back. That was the first door of return, okay? For me back into the continent, y'all. And I left there with so much pride, with a whole new family, whole new set of friends. Y'all, I cried the entire way back, okay? I cried from the time I left the airport in Bamako. I cried in the layover in Paris. I cried on the whole flight to JFK. Y'all, I cried for that whole 14 hours, y'all. Like, that's how much I was so sad to leave Mali. So Mali forever has an important place in my heart, y'all. If there's anybody listening that is Malian, we are family. Because when I ain't repping Haiti, I will forever rep Mali, okay? Because that is a beautiful country filled with beautiful people and such a deep, beautiful culture. And that is all for this episode, y'all. I hope y'all enjoyed it. Feel free to leave me some comments, and let me know what y'all think about the episode, or if you have any other questions, or if questions came up for you, or shoot, if you just got some comments and you like, yo, that was dope. Like, really enjoyed it. Looking forward to the next one. I always am open to compliments. And I will see you next time. Stay hydrated, moisturized, and at peace within yourself.